Hi everyone, this is Patti Conklin. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about our second lecture, which will be on cellular cleansing. What is it? How does it work? Why do we need it? All those exciting questions. We're going to have an interactive hour, and I thank you so much for being present and writing to us in the chat room and asking your questions and making your comments. We really love to hear from you because this is really all about you. It's about how your life interacts with your work, how your work interacts with your life. How do we clean ourselves out to be the best possible beings that we can be? And I'm going to be taking your questions, and I also am going to be taking questions from my executive director, show producer, Matt, and he's on board, and he's going to be asking questions in addition to letting me know your questions. So again, thank you so much for joining me. The other evening, if you did not see the other show was on vibrational medicine, and feel free to go ahead and get that show, because it was I think pretty good.
Yeah, I think it went off really well.
I think it did. But it kind of gave the basis of vibration, frequency, energy, all of those interchangeable things. And I want to give you a little bit of a background. I'm classified as a medical intuitive. And one of the things that I really work with is how our cells store memories, how it stores our words, and how our body's affected by it. And in the mid-1980s, I developed a process called ColorWorks when I had both forms of lupus. And within a year, I healed myself from the lupus using the ColorWorks. But I kept thinking, you know, there has to be a way to be able to neutralize out all of these memories and emotions within our cells without having to regurgitate our life. It just seemed like so much of psychotherapy was talk therapy. And it's wonderful. Absolutely, talk therapy and hypnosis is a wonderful avenue to take. But one of the things that happens is that we don't necessarily remember our early childhood memories. And so much of the time, these memories are what have really propelled you into illness and disease today. So cellular cleansing is a process that I developed that will assist in helping you neutralize out those emotions without having to regurgitate your life. So I want to start out with the basics. In life, every word you've ever spoken is stored within your cell. And as it stores within your cell, it slows down, as we talked about the other evening, the subtle energy field. Excuse me. And the subtle energy field is, in science, what we call your immune system. And as that subtle energy field is compromised, it slows down the actual vibrational rate of your body to a point where it eventually becomes dense. And as it becomes dense, it then becomes disease. And cellular is a way to get in there and neutralize those memories. Now, when I created cellular cleansing, I created it as a process of hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, because hypnosis allows you to go in and, as I put it, you simply visualize a room that's dirty, and your body's literally giving you the memories from that year, and you find a dirty room. You may find mold in a kitchen. You may find a dirty living room. You may find books stacked all over the place. You may find a bombed out shelter. You could find a garden that's overrun with weeds. Whatever you find is exactly what your body's giving you as a representation for that year. When you go in to this room, you clean it. And what you're really doing is neutralizing out the emotions from that year. And then with neuro-linguistic programming, you recreate whatever it is you want to create. So let's say that it's a kitchen, and all of a sudden you just have the walls dissolve, and you get out on a sailboat, and you just create your sailboat, or create a beautiful cabin out for the mountains. Whatever you're doing, you're replacing the memory, or the hit of the emotion of the memory with a very safe and secure emotional state. And it's that simple. And we work with the past life, we work with the womb, we work with every year of your life in different units. And it's that simple. It's that simple. You just lay there and you think, is this really working? Because you're not really having to work. And yes, indeed it is.
I don't know if it's fair to say that you're not really having to work. I know through personal experience and just assisting you with cellulars over the years that a lot of people sometimes, you know, they'll be laying there sweating.
Sometimes people feel like they got hit by a Mack truck. Let me rephrase it then. They're not typically having to do a lot of emotional processing.
Well, like you said,
there's not a lot of tears. There's not a lot of fear. I really don't allow that during a cellular. I want, if somebody starts to have an abreaction and they start having severe fear, then I want them to take the emotion, see it go into a hose, out of their chest, into a box that their helpers are holding, and just push it through. Because in my work, we're not going to sit there and spend 2 hours crying. We're going to get in, we're going to clean the room, we're going to recreate it, and move on to the next.
Wow, it sounds like a pretty, you know, it very much is an easy process insofar as, you know, there's not a lot to do other than these visualizations, which does make it very easy for people.
Right.
So it seems. But at the same time, you know, like you said, sometimes people feel like they got hit by a truck at the end of it, and
yeah,
you know, just all the processing and all the emotion that they do. So, what is your part in the cellular cleansing? What exactly do you do when you're guiding this?
Well, for me, and for the, what do we have, 17 associates around the world now, between Turkey and Europe and Canada and the United States. The process is helping, you know, guiding people through the process of the rooms, but also being able to perceive when their energy is stuck, if they're having problems cleaning the room, being aware that they're having problems cleaning the room, and really pushing some energy to assist them. My body works a little bit differently than my associates. My body tends to take in everything that you're processing. So for me, it's 48 hours of personal processing. For you, if you were working with an associate, you would have a few days of a low-grade fever and possibly some vomiting and diarrhea as you process through your own cellular cleanse.
So the process itself is easy, but the aftermath isn't necessarily easy.
Well, let's put it this way: it's a lot less challenging than if we have to go through 3 years of psychoanalysis
or
surgery or
right.
whatever. People will say, "How do I know if I need cellular?" And my premise is everyone needs it, just some need it more than others. And whether it's a physical or an emotional aspect, whether it's a physical or emotional problem, everybody really needs it. Everybody really needs that emotional cleanse, whether it's past life, whether it's what you incurred during the womb. I mean, as a woman, every single thing that I experienced while I was carrying my children, they also experienced because they were in womb. And I think it's important to remember. We also have times that cellular will really assist because someone's feeling abandoned, and there's nothing really in their life that points to why they would feel abandoned. But they feel abandoned because possibly there was a twin in the womb, another soul, and that soul opted out at the last minute. And so there's a feeling of abandonment, a sense of abandonment that people will let go of. The incredible thing for me in just observing the individuals who have done cellular cleansings over the years, because there's probably been well over 3,000. I think we're probably getting closer to 4,000 now. But there's always a behavioral change. Always a behavioral change. Sometimes you get incredible physical changes. And, that's obviously when people are coming in and they're very sick. That's what we're looking for. But you'll always see that behavioral change. You'll always see people looking at their life differently. sometimes people will do a cellular cleansing wanting to clean out and neutralize out the emotions because they know they are passing and they want to get beyond fear and let go of as much as they can possibly let go of. Some people are going to do it because they're filled with anger, they're filled with hatred, and they don't want to live there and live that way anymore. Some people are doing it because they have a fatal disease and they want to see if they can't heal it. So there's all sorts of different reasons, but it's really looking at the compilation of emotions that have stored within your cells throughout your lifetime.
Okay. Now, cellular cleansing can take up to 6 months afterwards for people to really process through everything.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Why such a long duration?
Well, you know, we go through all of these changes within our cells. Our cells regenerate every 7 years, and what takes place is you begin the shifting emotionally of your cellular structure, and maybe your body can only take different degrees of that change at one time. Maybe you'll have a massive change of emotion, and that's all your body can handle in that moment, and then it's going to take some more time over the next several months to continue that process of changing out the cells. And also people's homework. You know, I love giving homework, and the homework is a critical part. When I was creating the cellular cleansing, and I share this a lot in my classes, but I was doing my first Sunday sermon down in Naples, Florida, and an elderly gentleman came up to me during or after the sermon and asked me about prayer, because his feeling was he had been born and raised Catholic, and he and his wife were part of the Unity Church down there, and they had been praying, and he was a devout follower, and he would pray every day. And he kept saying, "You say that God speaks to all of us, but I've never heard him speak to me, and I pray every single day." I said, "But God's been talking to you for the longest time through your liver." And he just looked at me and he said, "Now, how did you know I need a liver transplant?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter whether how I knew it. What's important is that you put your hand on your liver and you ask what is being asked of you." And so I said, "Just go home and do that." So a couple of months later, he called the office and he said, "Well, I had a real interesting experience. I went home, I put on a pot of coffee, poured myself a cup of coffee, and I sat down at the kitchen table, and I put my hand on my liver, like you asked me to." And I said, "What do you want to say to me?" And he said, "All of a sudden I was transported, and I was standing next to this beautiful lake, and Jesus was standing next to me. And he didn't say anything to me. And all of a sudden we were out in this boat. And Jesus stood up and he looked at me and he said, 'Now you do it like this.' And he reached up to the top of his head and he started pulling down a zipper. And as he pulled down the zipper, I could see his insides. And he stood over the side of the boat and he pulled back his skin and he started cupping water on his liver. He said, I realized I had a zipper also. So I stood up and I unzipped my skin and I stood on the side of the boat and pulled my skin back and started cupping water on the liver. And I said, that's just awesome. And he's like, all of a sudden I was back in my kitchen. I realized I was having coffee. I said, what an incredible story. He said, no, what's incredible is my monthly enzyme check showed my liver is totally healed.
Wow.
He had a spontaneous healing then and there just by going through that process. And like I said, it was at the time that I was creating Cellular. And so I kept saying, this is what I call the healing pool. And so while you go in and you neutralize out every year of your life, you also then go in and you go to what I call a forgiveness pool, where every single person that you need to forgive or ask forgiveness appears. The unconditional love pool, where you go in and swim around and just really accept within yourself that in the eyes of the universe you're exactly where you need to be. And then you go into the healing pool and you unzip your skin and you clean out the various things that are going on. You give everything a shape, a color, a consistency. Whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, it doesn't matter. However you view it to look. So people have got their homework to do. And if somebody does a Cellular and they call the office 3 weeks later and they say, well, I'm just not, I'm feeling better here, but this hasn't been dealt with. And I'll say, how are you visualizing your healing pool? And if they say, well, gee, I haven't had time to do it, my response is going to be, you call me when you have time to do it. Don't call me and ask me to take care of something, because this is really your work, and I'm a facilitator and I've got a toolbox. But the healing truly comes from you.
And that makes a lot of sense. It's nice though that I would assume after going through a cellular that when you give people homework, is that what prevents these memories? Because nobody can be unconditional all the time, and if it's a state of being conditional that makes that stores things in your cells that make them become dense, what's to stop it from happening again?
Well, because the behavior begins to change. I think one of the most phenomenal things about cellular is, in some ways, it can be very subtle. Individuals can be in the grocery store or at work, and all of a sudden they'll realize that they're responding differently to an event. And it won't be anything major. All of a sudden they'll realize that they're handling a situation differently. Maybe they're not becoming angry. Maybe they're able to see more different views of the situation. And that's an exciting time for them. I mean, that's an exciting time for them to sit and really understand that they're changing. And as I was saying in the previous lecture on vibrational medicine, it's about understanding who you are right now. And it's about understanding your words, it's about understanding your behaviors, and it's about you taking personal responsibility in the moment for how you act from this point out. Because certainly with cellular, you can do a tremendous amount of work and then just allow yourself to get refilled by keeping the same behavior and the same actions. And it's really more about changing that. And sometimes it's a very natural thing, and sometimes people really have to stop and start paying attention to their behavior.
Can it be one specific stored event that creates disease, or is it usually a combination of events?
It's usually a combination of events. People who are really ill or feel like they've got a real emotional blockage, they feel like it has to be an event somewhere in their past. Typically, it's not a huge event. Typically, it's a compilation of emotions that have gathered throughout their lifetime. And I think that that's where people really are helped by this process, because they're not searching for a singular event that created this problem. They begin to understand that it's behavior throughout their lifetime that has created the problem.
Let's talk about children coming in to the world with birth defects or learning disorders and things of that nature. Is that something that they picked up in the womb, or is that a contract their soul made when they came into the body?
Either or. Either or. I mean, a lot of times children who come in with issues, whether they come in with disabilities, whether they come in with psychological issues, usually they're coming in as a learning lesson for everyone around them, not just necessarily parents, but it could be the doctors and nurses that they're in contact with at birth. There's always a learning lesson going on. Sometimes the soul itself has contracted to come in to experience it, and sometimes it is coming from the womb. So it's really, really challenging to give it any one delineation.
Yeah. How young of a person can you work with cellular, where it becomes a beneficial thing?
Yeah, for me, age 7 is a real pivotal time. I think children 7 and on can understand the process. You don't do the same process with a child. You make it fun. You make it entertaining for them. You can also use the parent as a surrogate. And we did a lot of this in Istanbul. It was the first time that I had used really parents as surrogates for the children for under the age of 7.
Explain that process to me. How does that work?
The parent is actually the one who lays down and goes through the visualizations, seeing them guiding their child by the hand into the room, into the room to clean. And so the parent's actually going through it instead of the child. Because maybe the child is too sick, maybe there's a learning disability going on. And so the parent actually takes the role as the surrogate. As a child reaches the age of 7 and above, I think that they have a lot more capability to go through the process and make it fun. And sometimes I really just have to get in there and manipulate it myself, and manipulate their energies and pull things out of them versus having them go through a whole visualization process.
Right. Let's talk about the correlation between vibrational medicine and cellular cleansing. How do those come together?
Well, vibrational medicine for me, especially in using ColorWorks, to alter a frequency. ColorWorks is good at taking one emotion at a time and working on it for 30 days. We typically say that it takes 30 days to change a behavior. And so you do a ColorWorks process on one emotion at one time for 30 days, and then you move into the next emotion.
Well,
because we've got so many different layers.
Why can't you just ask your body what color it needs to remove all stored memories?
Because it's not definitive enough. You know, your body needs specifics. And if I just said, what color do I need to heal? My body's response would be, well, yeah, where did you want me to start? And it just can't take that kind of information. What we found with the cellular cleansing, however, is that with the cellular, because you're going in and you're visualizing a room, when you go in, the body's able to give you a compilation of emotions for that given year. So at the end of cellular, you're really releasing, you know, anywhere from 40 to 70% of all of your combined emotions. You're neutralizing out in one fell swoop versus, you know, one emotion, one at a time, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. So sometimes ColorWorks works best. You know, if there's just a issue that you want to work with, you're going to do ColorWorks. If you're ready to get in there and let go of a huge piece of it, then you're going to want cellular cleansing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense. Although, just out of curiosity, I have to ask, you know, if ColorWorks does deal well with one thing at a time, you know, even though it takes 25, 30 days to deal with an issue,
right.
You know, could you, over the course of time, use that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, ColorWorks, I mean, you know, I've been doing this now for 12 years, and I have people who maybe had an appointment 10 years ago who I taught ColorWorks to, who uses ColorWorks every single day. You know, and maybe they're setting up a second appointment 10 years later because, you know, something's just kind of overwhelming to them. But what I say is every single day, even if you're not working on a major issue, you should be, you know, even in the shower in the morning, what color does the water need to be to wash out any, you know, any stuff that I'm unaware of? You know, just to kind of keep things moving
now,
through.
Isn't that kind of vague, though?
It is kind of vague, but there's nothing really up in my mind, and so it can be vague. But if I wake up in the morning agitated, I have to take personal responsibility that I'm waking up agitated. And so I use whatever tools I need to to remove the agitation. Now let's say that I woke up 3 days in a row and I'm agitated. Then it's really worth my time to sit down and say, what color do I need to bring into consciousness why I'm feeling agitated in the morning, and to be able to do some journaling for 10 days, to be able to see the core issue as to why I'm feeling agitated. Most people will go through cellular if there's really some major stuff up, you know, uncontrollable anger or uncontrollable sadness, major depression, you know, and there's a few things that work very well with cellular cleansing. Diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, those are situations that are very easily treated with cellular cleansing. With ColorWorks, ColorWorks really well with depression and sadness. So, you know, it really depends on what's going on, how much you're ready to get in there and just really change things.
Well, with cellular cleansing, you don't need to know the core issue, though, right? Like
exactly. Exactly. Cellular cleansing, you don't need to know the core. With color works, because you're working on a specific emotion. You have to know what the core is for that specific situation.
How does the average person just find out what their core issue is with something, though?
Trust themselves. I mean, a lot of times it's just about putting your hand on whatever body part is hurting, or, sitting with the emotion and saying, what is this? People get so scared about being wrong, but the reality is you can't hurt yourself if you're wrong. If you're not getting a result, it means it's not the correct emotion, and you just move someplace else. But one of the hardest challenges people have in this world is trusting themselves. Trusting themselves to know without having to go to external. Because the reality is you don't need me. You don't need any other facilitator. You've got your own toolbox. But sometimes we feel like we need the guidance. But you don't need us. We simply have a toolbox. And if you want to make use of the tools, then it works. Let me carry that over for a minute, because people have a lot of feelings that I think are really need to be rearranged. There's a lot of feeling out there that you'll go to one practitioner and you won't get a result, and maybe you go to 2 or 3 practitioners, and then all of a sudden you go to a practitioner that actually helps you, and people will go, well, those 3 that I saw before weren't any good. This one is the one. Well, you got to remember, everybody has a frequency. And so if I've got a 1/2-inch wrench in my toolbox and you need a 1/2-inch wrench, then I'm going to be the one who's going to facilitate your ability to get better. But if you need a 1/4-inch wrench and I've only got a 1/2-inch wrench, I am not going to be the facilitator for you. I will not have the correct frequency. That doesn't mean I'm a bad facilitator. It means that I don't have the frequency for you. And I think that there's just so much chatter about who's good and who's not good. And it's not about who's good and who's not good. Everybody has their own skill set, and everybody has their frequency. And if they have the frequency that's going to facilitate your healing, then that's what's going to happen. It's one of the things I like about cellular cleansing is you really don't need to have a specific vibration, because you're doing so much of it within yourself.
How often do you get calls from people that just want to validate what they already think? They say, my arm hurts, and you say, well, it's a self-esteem issue. And they're like, that's what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. And so much of the time it is. Again, it comes right back into, trust yourself. You don't need me to tell you that it's self-esteem. I mean, the bottom line is you really don't need me to. Now, if you need help in understanding what created the self-esteem, then, maybe that's something that we can talk about. But you've got to remember that everything is conjecture. My sight's pretty good, but there's no one who has sight capability who's going to be able to tell you exactly what was taking place. They can be pretty sure about what was taking place, but they're not going to be exact about it.
How do false memories affect the body?
False memories affecting the body, all you'll see is the brain functioning. You won't see anything within the body itself. And so when somebody's telling me such and such happened, and I see no reaction within their body, I'm pretty sure it's a false memory. And then I may say, well, how did you remember that information? 9 times out of 10, the response is going to be, I saw a psychic once who told me this is what happened.
Huh.
And it's like, whoa, 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 stop giving your power away. Again, so much of our life is not about one traumatic situation. It's about a compilation of memories, and it may feel incredibly overwhelming. It doesn't take away from the fact that you're in pain about it. But stop searching for one area of truth, because there almost always is not just one area of truth.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. How does cellular cleansing work? How well does it work with other modalities of healing, be it Reiki or acupuncture and things like that? Is it something that can be used in conjunction with each other?
Yeah, I mean, cellular cleansing can work in conjunction with anything you're doing. And I think that, a lot of times people will start doing too many things. I think that, whether you choose cellular cleansing, whether you choose acupuncture, whether you choose chiropractic, whether you choose Reiki, choose one thing, maybe two, but that's it. Stop putting your body through so much. A lot of times we just have this piece of information going through our brain that if it's natural or if it's energetic, we ought to be able to do as much as we want. And that's not true. If the energetic portion is truly working, then don't overload your body. It would be like mixing, Ambien and Xanax and all sorts of different chemicals together. Just because they're natural doesn't mean that you should be doing that at all times. Pick one or two and trust your body to heal. We're coming back to trust again.
That's what it all boils down to.
This is true. This is true.
If you pick acupuncture and then, and give it a good solid effort, but after a couple months don't experience anything, should you just stop doing that and try something else and maybe come back to acupuncture at a later time?
Yeah, I think that no matter what you're doing, if you haven't experienced any change, certainly within 2 months, I would say 1 month. If you're not seeing, and measurable change. I mean, it could be very subtle, but you know that it's moving in the right direction. That's important. But don't beat a dead horse. If you're not getting any results, stop it, because it's not the frequency. It's just not the frequency that your body needs. And it doesn't mean, again, that it's a bad modality or that it doesn't work. It's just not the modality for you in that moment. And that's what's so hard. When people are so sick, they're moving through so many different modalities in order to get healthy. But I always keep coming back to, you have to deal with the behavior. You have to deal with the emotional core that's sitting there in order for you to really facilitate a true healing. My belief. We talk about one of the certified associates, and I know she's teaching this weekend, so I'm going to talk about her anyways. And many of you can read the 2 books she has. One is Unstuck Yourself, and I don't know what the other one is. Sorry, Nancy. But Nancy Barrick, who, like I said, is also teaching a class this weekend with Global Hypnosis Summit. Nancy was an individual who had been diagnosed with muscular dystrophy and had a tremendous amount of problems walking, and eventually reached a point of being in a scooter, and a very, very talented hypnotherapist. So everybody would see her at the hypnotherapy conferences in her scooter, and everybody gave her all sorts of different ideas as to what would heal her. And she was always kind of like, yeah, and she appreciated it, but she would never felt like it was right. And one day she came up to me at a conference and she said, I think it's time to do a cellular cleansing. And I had never talked to her about it. She had just listened to different processes or different programs that I had given. And so she came to Atlanta and did a cellular cleansing. And she was literally up within a few hours. And, her muscle mass came back. And she's doing ballroom dancing today, in addition to hypnotherapy, hypnobirthing. And she's just phenomenal.
From wheelchair to waltzing, isn't that the other book?
Pardon?
From wheelchairs to waltzing?
That could certainly be it, from wheelchair to waltzing. I'm not sure, but yeah, sounds about right. It would be her at least. If it's not the name of the book, it needs to be her next book. But it's a very, very, very it's a very good example of how quickly your body will change when you find the emotion that is stuck in there, that is stopping you from healing. Some of it is a belief system. Some of it is a belief system that you can't get well. Some of it is just such an ingrained behavior that you're not even aware that you're doing it.
I think it's fair to say that we are our biggest inhibitors to healing.
Yes.
At birth we have everything we need to heal, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it gets drummed out of us. I mean, one of the saddest things that we do as human beings, and we don't do it maliciously, but we teach each other not to trust. The insecurities, a person will take an insecurity, or a child will take an insecurity, and just really begin to make that their life of not trusting what they know. And we tend to trust every place else other than within ourselves. And we do it very easily to our children. Let's say our child is making a tower, and they're just, they've got their building blocks, and they're working really hard, and it keeps collapsing, and it keeps collapsing, and it keeps collapsing. And you have to go run errands. And this child is just building the tower, and you say, let me show you how it's done. Let me show you what's going to work. And the child goes, okay, and watches how you do it. And then, different phrases will say, I've been through this. Trust me. Trust your teacher. Trust. And we learn to trust externally versus, what do you think? You're not making a right or wrong decision. I'll never forget when Daniel was finishing up high school, and you may remember this. When Daniel was finishing up high school and he was looking at colleges, and he had like 4 different colleges, all lined up on his desk, and he's looking at, this college for this, and this college for this, and this college for this, and Daniel can get really intense. And Daniel was just like, I don't know which one to go to. And I just said, it doesn't matter. Pick one. Because whatever you need to learn from that college, you're going to learn. And if you need to switch later on, then you can switch later on. We get in this behavioral mode where we think that because we're making a decision that we are now tied into it for life. And it's just so untrue. And how you perceive the choice that you're making will change over time. But you've got to trust yourself to be able to take that step forward. And so much of cellular cleansing is getting all of these emotions that have been locked up in your body out, so that you have the freedom to redecide and begin the trust again.
It all boils down to personal responsibility.
It always boils down to personal responsibility, and it always does.
Yeah, when you make a decision, you feel locked into it, basically because you don't want to assume the responsibility to change your mind.
Yeah, well, and you also don't want to assume the responsibility and the perception that you failed. And there is no such thing as failure. I mean, every breath you're taking, you're learning something new. And if you've learned something new, how could it have possibly been wrong or a failure? It's just not possible. And so much of life, we have to change the perception of what we buy into. And it's coming back to the personal responsibility of what really, what really drives me, what really pushes me forward. Am I willing to take personal responsibility after I get so sick that I no longer can function in my life and I get scared, and now I'm willing to take personal responsibility? Or am I willing to get into the situation, take personal responsibility, and learn from the situation so that I don't have to get sick in order to learn?
Can it ever be too late?
Yeah, actually it can sometimes be too late. Now, in the divine picture, a lot of people disagree with me on this, and that's cool. But Patti's perception of the world is that everything's preordained. You can't come into this life and screw it up. You just can't come in and go, oopsie, and check out, and then stand in front of the angels and have them say, my God, you really screwed that lifetime up. Now you're going to have to go into the next lifetime, and it's going to have to be 10 times worse in order for you to learn the lesson. That's such judgment. That's such conditionalism. I don't think it happens that way. I think that in the space and moment of time that we broke off from Source, that we literally in that moment contracted every single sojourn that we would ever experience as a soul.
So where's free will coming into play?
Free will's so lovely. Free will is this. You can be as happy as you want or as miserable as you want, but you're going to walk through life. And free will is you get to choose whether or not you're going to be happy or sad. Now, my buddy good buddy, and he's also got a class this weekend, Dick Sutphin. Dick Sutphin wrote a book called Soul Agreements. And in his book and in his journeys throughout the world, he said, every soul has free will. But I'm beginning to realize that there's different levels of free will. That there's some souls who have come into this lifetime who don't have choice. They're here to do a job. And he wrote about 12 of us. And I'm one of those. I'm one of those individuals. But he also said that you get to the next level where people still have a path to walk, but they have a little bit of negotiation room. They have a little bit of negotiation about what their soul's going to experience. The next level is a soul who comes in who's got quite a bit of leeway. And then there's a fourth level of individuals who come in who go, you know what, I'd rather just take this lifetime off. And I'm just going to play it out one more. And so that's kind of his theory. And I don't disagree with that. I'm not sure that that's really what takes place. But it makes sense.
I gotta say, if you really believe that everything's was contracted at the moment, isn't that just kind of passing the buck along? Doesn't that take away from personal responsibility? If you're just kind of like, you know what, I stole a car, but I was supposed to do it.
Well, no.
You know?
I think that would be a great byline, but no, I don't think it works that way. I think that because, we still have a societal structure. We still have a societal structure of what's accepted and what's not accepted. My encouragement is, however, when something does happen, I think it's important for people, let me just preface this, I think it's important for people to be able to look at themselves in the mirror at night and say, did I live my life according to integrity and honesty, according to what I believe? And again, that's finding who are you as a human being? What do you really believe? Not what you're taught. What do you really believe? And I think that if you can do that at night, then you're going to live your life in integrity and honesty according to what you know. So you're not going to be passing the buck. I mean, I can't go steal a car tomorrow and then go, it's supposed to be that way. If I sit in jail because I stole the car, I could be going, well, okay, this is this is the example of what's going to happen if I'm stealing a car and I'm spending the next 20 years in jail. I can also say that's my contracted
That'd
situation.
That'd be a really nice car to spend 20 years in jail.
Well, I'm just saying. So I think it's incredibly important to understand, to be the best person you can possibly be. We talk a lot in metaphysics about becoming a light body. And I think what's really important, the only way you become a light body is to continue to work on your emotions and continue to be unconditional. If I'm stealing a car, if I'm taking something away from someone else, then I'm not really in an unconditional state. I'm in a very conditional state, of a me state.
But isn't saying, being able to look in the mirror and say, I did the best I could, I was in integrity, isn't that a self-judgment? Regardless of whether it's positive or negative, it's still a judgment, therefore it's not unconditional.
I think it's an observation. I'm not sure that I'm willing to say that it's a judgment. I think it's an observation. I think that, the whole path of becoming a spiritual being is, how can I be the observer no matter what else is going on in life, no matter what the externalisms? Even the kids earlier in life had said, why aren't you bilocating? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And I just said, there's a reason I was put in a female body in the Western world given kids to raise. There's a reason for it. It's not just for me to take off to the Himalayas. I think that, for me going to a monastery and shirking my responsibilities as a Western woman, I think would have been one of those things where I would have been gently pushed back to the Western. I don't think that in terms of my soul advancement, that I'd be able to sit in a monastery or put myself in a closet and never teach again. I don't think that that's what's taking place. And I think that if I did have that behavior, I would be gently pushed back into the forefront, as any of us would.
Right.
So you've got task, you've got path that you need to go through as a soul, but you also need to balance that with who you are as a human being.
Is it pretentious to add, like, if you were to ask yourself, like, what can I do to make the world a better place today?
A lot of people ask that question, actually. What can I do to make the world a better place today? Take personal responsibility for yourself. Bottom line, don't worry about what Susie's doing in the next cubicle. I don't care if she's in there hacking up bodies.
No.
How do you make the world a better place? You deal with your own emotions. You deal with your behavior. You deal with your judgment. You gently become the observer. And the more that you can observe and be out of judgment, it's like understanding that what we talked about with the last class. I don't know what your path is, and so I can't judge what your path is. But if I decide I don't like you in a work situation, and I decide to start making comments to myself or to other coworkers about what dress you're wearing or what suit you're wearing or how your clothing looks or what your makeup is, I'm making it all personal, and it tends to inflame the situation. If I can look at you as a soul and go, I don't know what your path is, so I'm going to keep whatever conflicts we have in business to simply business situations and stop making it personal, we're going to get along much better.
Is it wrong of you to not like somebody, those people you meet that you just don't like? You can't put a finger on it. Now that doesn't mean you have to be malicious.
Right.
You're just like,
right.
I don't like you. Is that a bad thing?
No, I think that the statement to make is we're just not in sync with each other. Now, a lot of past life theorists, my buddy Sutphin included, would say, you probably had a past life together. They probably killed you or you killed them, and it's karmic. And you're coming back around and you're settling a karmic debt. In my world, you got high frequency, you got low frequency. It's not good or bad frequency. It's high frequency, it's low frequency. You got low frequency and my frequency is a little higher. You're not going to feel so comfortable to me. I'm really not going to want to hang around you. Vice versa. You may not want to hang around me. But people with higher vibrations, people tend to want to go to because they want to raise their own frequency. And so they'll come back around. But I don't think that it's unfair. I think that a lot of times in illness and disease, we see individuals who can't forgive a parent or possibly, forgive a behavior that took place as a child. And I think it's really important to remember that you are an incredibly beautiful human being, and everything that you experienced helped make you the beautiful person you are today. And so while you don't have to condone what happened to you as a child, you can look at what you learned from that situation and simply focus on that and let the rest go.
Nice. We have 12 minutes left. Let's talk for a little bit about intent.
Intent. It's as bad as expectation. I think that you've got to remember when you create intent that you can only create intent based upon the history of what you know. And so if I've had bad experiences with the color red, then my intent may be to use a different color. But the reality is the color in and of itself is not bad. It's just what I know. But that doesn't mean that that's all I should experience. So when we create intent, in so many ways we're limiting ourselves in terms of everything and anything we can experience. It's like setting the intent of a goal. If you create the steps of 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do this in order to reach this goal. You can only base step 1, 2, 3 according to the history of what you know. And if it didn't work then, it's probably not going to work now. So if you just set your goal and let go of when it's going to happen, it will happen. We're going right back into predestiny here. If I am meant to be poor, If that's what my soul is here to experience, I'm going to be poor. I don't care how many prosperity classes I go to. I'm going to be poor. Now, does that mean you shouldn't go to the prosperity classes? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is that you be at peace with where you are in the now. And if you're at peace with where you are in the now, then you can flow much easier into your future. But if you're always in the I want stage, of the intent of I want to get here, then you're not in the now. And if you're not in the now, you can't flow to the intent. You will be rich. You will, if your goal is to become rich, you will be rich. It may be 4 lifetimes from now, but you will be rich. And it's letting go of what your expectation is about what's going to happen in this lifetime. Because the reality is you don't know. And everything happens in the universe time.
This begs the question, and I'm not trying to open a big can of worms, but what if this is the only life? What if this is the only shot you got?
Then awesome. Be in the now. Enjoy it. Enjoy it now. Because if I'm focused on tomorrow, I can't enjoy what's happening today. And I don't care if it's the only lifetime. That doesn't really matter. It's, am I cherishing today? Am I letting go of past emotions that keep me in frustration or anger or jealousy or less than, so that I'm not appreciating and enjoying what's happening today? If I'm listening to the birds sing outside, if I'm so focused on tomorrow, I can't hear the birds sing today. And they're singing like crazy because it's a nice rainy day here in Georgia. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. But I'm curious to know, if you have to live in the now and in the moment, when you're talking about someone that's dealing with depression or any of social anxieties, where it's very uncomfortable to be in the present, what are some of the things they can do? Obviously,
do a cellular cleansing. Do color works. I mean, take a step forward, because if you do nothing, then you know that that's where you're going to stay. And taking personal responsibility, sometimes it's okay to do nothing. Sometimes you need nothing for a couple of weeks. Accept that you're going to do nothing. One of the hardest things in being a type A personality for me throughout the years is reaching a stage where it's like, okay, I'm going to stay in bed today just because I wanna. Just because I want to. And not make an excuse, not feel guilty, not make an excuse as to why I want to stay in bed. Because, and we talk about this a lot in classes, people, socially, it's acceptable to not feel good. So we get secondary gain. If I have obligated myself to too many different things, and I just can't deal with all of them, I put too much on my plate. If I call one of the organizers and say, I know I committed to helping you this weekend, but I just can't. I've got such an upset stomach. Everybody goes, oh no, of course, it's not a problem. And second, can I bring you soup? What can I do for you? So we get a secondary gain out of not feeling well, instead of saying, you know what, I know I obligated myself to this weekend, and I can really do it if you have to, but I filled up my plate, and I really can't do it. Then you get a feeling that you're going to be thought of as less than. But the reality is, if you make up an illness, remember, your body's recording everything as truth. And you make up the story of having an upset stomach, guess what? You're going to get an upset stomach.
Yeah, that used to happen to me when I was a kid. I'd want to get out of school with fake being sick, and then I'd get sick.
You betcha. You betcha. You come down with the faking syndrome at 7:30 in the morning, and by 2:30 in the afternoon, you're really feeling sick. So we do it a lot without a lot of times understanding the consequences of what's really taking place.
Absolutely, absolutely. So people, I want to touch back on depression and things like that, because it is so hard for people to get started, even if they consciously recognize it. And what is what would your advice be to somebody just to say, hey, just get out there? And does all that boil back to personal responsibility as well?
It does boil back to personal responsibility, but I think the most important key, especially when we're dealing with depression, because it's hard to think. You know, it's hard to think when you're in the midst of depression. Take that baby step. Maybe just, you know, when you're eating, make sure you eat fish once a week. Do nothing else for the next 4 weeks except eat fish once or twice. Maybe get yourself some spinach. You know, the problem that we have is that psychologically we think we need to do all of this stuff at once. And when you're in a depressed state, that's so beyond overwhelming that you can't even go there. So what you do is you take very tiny baby steps. And if that means, you know, changing your situation so that you're getting more sleep, maybe changing the situation so you're sitting out in the sunshine for a half hour. I can't tell you how many cancer patients that I've worked with throughout the years that what really shifted their whole behavior was just going outside and sitting in the sun. Not walking, not running, not mowing the lawn, just sitting outside and getting some sun and fresh air. And that starts to make them feel good. So understand, baby steps are so worthwhile and they're so important because a lot of times we can't make drastic change. Drastic change, either, you know, we take the baby steps or we stop everything. And I've always had the personality that I've had to work through of not so much going into depression, but when I, in the past, have been uncomfortable about things, I change everything. You know, I just cut the rope, change everything, and take off on a new adventure. And that was my way of dealing with things. And I had to learn, no, you know what, that's the easy way out.
Cutting and running.
It's cutting and running. And even though it's an all-new great adventure, it didn't deal with the situation because I attracted those same people right back into my life.
So you weren't taking personal responsibility.
So I was not taking personal responsibility. And I think the important thing in life is understanding none of us are going to do things correctly because there isn't a correctly. But you do need to look at behavior and say, is this truly being unconditional? Or what am I doing in this? One of the things I promised in the last class was that I'd open up for a few minutes for healing.
Well, you got 2 minutes left.
So I'm going to do this for a minute and a half. I'm just going to open up. And what I mean by that is I'm going to shift my frequency. If everything blanks out on your camera or on your computer, then I blew the camera, but I'm going to attempt to be careful. So for those of you out there who just need a little bit of healing energy, just feel free to just imagine a white light just coming into you and just take what you need. Feel free to make use of that. It's still coming through. If you'd like to have more information, feel free to visit our website, www.patticonklin.com. I'll be around the United States, San Francisco, at the end of April, if you're viewing this at that point, and in some different countries. So if you're in Taiwan or Turkey or London, keep an eye on the website for upcoming events. I hope you enjoyed this last hour. I know that Matt and I certainly enjoyed being able to be with you and be a part of things. Again, if you'd like any more information, you can also call our office at 678-344-3037, or check out the website. Give Matt a call, and certainly ask him whatever, and he'll do his best to understand it. If you'd like to experience the cellular cleansing, certainly let us know. But we thank you so much for being a part of this. We thank you for being with us today. Have a wonderful day. Much love, and God bless.